Welcome to the HMO Property Show by investors for investors. Brought to you by the HMO Property Co, Australia's leaders in impact investing. Investments made with the intention to generate a measurable, beneficial social or environmental impact alongside a positive financial return. Catch us weekly as we discuss all things cash flow positive property investing.
Welcome back to the HMO Property Show. I'm your host, Neil Gibb, and today I've got my good friend and mentor, Mr. Calvin Coyles, in the studio. Calvin, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thank you. It's glad to be back, not on this show, but the first one we did was the Perth Entrepreneurs podcast, right?
It was.
And now we're in a brand new space, and you've blown up since we saw you last. Just grateful to be here.
I think you were like the third or fourth guest I had on the other podcast that I did.
You know, I'm grateful to be back.
Mate, it's a pleasure to have you back. Few reasons that I wanted to bring you back as well. A, you're one of my best friends, mate, and I love spending time with you. Number two, you've got your new book coming out.
Yes.
And number three, it all ties in with some content out there about which is the mindset of a property investor.
Yes.
Because we know it's 80% psychology and 20% execution.
Yep.
And the psychology stops a lot of people from moving forward, doesn't it?
Fear, right? Fear paralyzes people, and it's no different when you're spending big sums of money as well, and you're providing for your family's financial future. So,
correct.
Yeah, big issues, and we'd love to discuss them all.
Yeah. And you know, that fear kind of flows through to me sometimes as well, because people take our feedback and advice on investments.
Of course.
And I don't take that lightly. So when people say to me, is this a good investment? And I say, look, this is the return it's going to get and we can help you deliver that, then I definitely don't take that lightly. So hopefully this will help me as well.
Well, look, I think as a general thing, if you weren't afraid, it's probably more a sign of ignorance than confidence. So it's not about not being afraid, it's about using anxiety, if you will, or that sort of a heightened sense of, oh, geez, if this goes wrong, we're in trouble, using that as a grounding principle, right? Because if you just didn't care, well, you just give free-handed advice wherever you like around the barbecue, because you know what, I'm not responsible for that, but I don't care about the ramifications. The fact that you do care says, well, actually, it's because I care about you as a person, even if I don't really know you. I want to make sure I give you the right advice, because it just speaks to moral character. And then if you're investing, you care about what the ramifications of that is, because it's probably your money that you're investing rather than investing a hedge fund or a trust fund, right? So it's actually a really good thing to have that. It's just designed, most people don't realize it's designed to be a wake-up call to go, just be considerate. Don't not take action, but just take considerate action, take intentional action. I don't think people get that. Most people just pull back when they feel afraid, as opposed to doing the work to get them in a place where they feel more intentional. Yeah,
and there's a lot of fear in the market now as well, obviously driven by the media.
Yes.
We could probably talk about the media in a totally different topic, but the media and emotions drive the market, and at the minute there's a lot of negative press out there around the real estate industry, construction industries on its knees, interest rates going through the roof. So obviously this is stopping a lot of investors from moving forward. So, I mean, how do we help them get past that? Get through it?
Yeah, well, so I think first things first is that it doesn't really matter what game you're playing. Whether you're playing the real estate game, whether you're playing a business game, whether you're playing the game of setting a family up, there's going to be naturally some friction between where you want to go and where you're currently at. And that might be what if I put myself out there in a relationship and it doesn't go right? It's no real different to your brain than what if I invest into a property transaction and it goes to shit. So that's the same. It's the same game. We talk about in the book and through our work, if you want to live a wild life, a life on your own terms, you need three things. First is a vision, compelling vision. Then you need internal alignment, and that might be in a property sense. There's both in terms of, does this deal fit my long-term wealth strategy, but also does the feasibility of this deal stack, right? And so personally, that's where you've got beliefs, emotions, behaviors, focus, and values. But from it, you should have an investment psychology as well, a way of making decisions of what type of deals do we do, what type of deals don't we do, who do we partner with? We just talked about that before we got on the show, like who are the partners that we have on board, and that's based off values. It's not necessarily based off even skill set. Like it starts with those founding values. And then finally, what's the strategy that I'm executing? I think there's so many people that are concerned about the property investing space at the moment because they're a one-trick pony. They only have one strategy. And if you only got one strategy, which for most investors is you buy a negatively geared property, more than likely off the plan, you hope it goes up in value, you sort of subsidize the rent, you get a tax deduction, like what a load of shit. And so no wonder why when you look at the stats around that, 82% of Australians will never own their own home. So it's 12% of people that are property investors. And then of that, 80% of the people that own a property in Australia will only ever own one. There'll never be multiple investors. So I think it's over 80% of investors only own a single property. And then when you think about the rental return traditionally that you would get if you owned the property outright, you really need a handful of them to make any real money. So it's like most people barely afford the home they're in. If they're fortunate enough to have a second property, they'll never have more than that one investment property. And that's because they buy the wrong property. So it's not a desire problem or maybe even an alignment problem. It's a strategy problem. And so we were just talking before we got on the air. We've got one that we're developing with your team that we're bringing to the market in terms of being a HMO. I was saying to Ash, whilst it's an expensive time to build, whilst the market's crazy, while the interest rates are crazy, I'd love to have 10 of them because it doesn't matter what the market looks like. The way that we've structured that strategy, it works in no matter what market it's in. Correct. So when you understand that, if you have confidence in the strategy, well, then you're not afraid of what's going to happen because you know, hey, this is where I need to get to. In order for me to get there in terms of my long-term vision, we need this much money coming in. What's the fastest, most effective, safest way to get there? Then you take confident action. But if you're not really clear on where you're going and you don't have really a strategy and you're just like, shit, what do I do next? Well, then you're in a world of pain. And so that's probably, as a starting point, maybe get clear on where the fuck you're going. And then like, what's the strategy you're trying to execute? And is this strategy going to work in up and down markets? And if not, get a better strategy by connecting with the right type of people.
Yeah, like it, love it.
Yeah.
So when it comes back to the compelling vision, which is that's the first step. Yeah?
Yes.
How do people understand what that vision looks like and what they want from their life?
Yeah. Well, it starts by realizing that you can have whatever you want, which is actually way harder to conceptualize than having just something specific, right? We were just talking about it before. We're both from the UK, very similar area, just a couple of kilometers apart. And most people don't really have a vision, no disrespect to them. They don't really have a vision for more in their life beyond where they're at. And so it's like, I'm going to work hard during the week and I'll go and see the footy and go to the pub on the weekend. And if that's what you want, fantastic. But it's important to know, did you do and design that intentionally or by default? And so what I say to a lot of our clients is to just get clear on whether it be 1,000 days from now or 10 years from now, long enough away that you think anything is possible, basically. What do you want to have in your life? Where do you want to live? What car do you want to drive? What do you want your family to look like? If you're in business, what team do you want to have? If you don't want a team, excellent, like awesome. But basically go through every area of your life. Wellness, income, love, lifestyle, direction is sort of our methods. And then you just go, what do I want? And not what do I think that I can have, but if I could have anything that I wanted, what would I actually genuinely want? And most people first answer out of lack. So if you're feeling tired and exhausted, I just want to be on a permanent holiday. Well, you don't, because if you went to the beach for 2 weeks in a row, you'd be pretty bored pretty quickly. Boring, yeah, exactly. So, like, what's going to make it meaningful for you? And then specifically from an investment perspective, people don't really talk about this enough, which is risk. Yeah, we're concerned about the risk of something going wrong, but if you hit your target in terms of financially, I've got enough, well, anything beyond that is exposing the whole portfolio to unnecessary risk for unnecessary gain. Yeah. I was listening to a quote from Warren Buffett the other day. He was talking about a hedge fund that went bankrupt, and he said that they risked what they had to go after what they didn't need. And so it's like, well, if you've already got it enough financially, then taking on board more for the sake of more it's a stupid idea. So we've got to get clear on what is enough. And this is something my wife and I did actually on our first date. We went through what does our dream life look like, and we calculated what that looked like in terms of how much we needed every year. Yeah. And when you get clear on that, that's like your golden parachute number, right? How much do you need to live your best life? And thankfully, over years, it's got less than it's got more, thankfully, right? Because otherwise it can be expensive. We've got expensive taste. So once you get clear on that, for me, from a financial perspective, I'm a big believer in the 20x rule. So Swiss bankers have figured this out a long time ago, which is that in an up and down market, you need about 20 times net assets to be financially free. So if you know for you as your family, you need 100K passive income, you need about 2 million, not 20. That's me thinking. That'd be a million. You need about $2 million in net assets. Traditionally, that is not in an HMO, obviously, but in a traditional setting, you need about that so that you can live on a 5% yield. Yeah. And then you just pick your number, you get clear on what that is, you get clear on what the assets are, and then you go, worst case scenario, if I'm being conservative and traditional, that's what I'm looking for. Can I work with someone like yourself and the HMO team to be able to get there in a more dynamic way? Absolutely, I don't need that much. But once you're then clear on that, then it's just about putting a plan in place to get to that outcome. There's a great scene in Alice in Wonderland, and I'm inspired by some of this stuff. And Alice is running through the maze and she gets lost. And so she asks the cat in the tree, which way do I go? Do I go left or right? And the cat says, where do you want to be? And she says, well, it doesn't very much matter. Like, I just don't want to be where I am. And then he says, well, it doesn't matter if you go left or right. Because if you don't know where you're going, then there's no right or wrong decision. There's no good or bad investments. It's only good or bad in relation to where it's taking you and your family. And if you're not clear on that destination, you shouldn't be investing in the first place. Like, it should start with, is this moving me towards the goal that we have or away from? And that just requires time. It requires you to invest the time to get clear on what I actually want. And if you're in a relationship, super critical that you and your partner are on the same page. We know a couple, Ken and Kristen.
Yeah.
They came and did my stuff. And we got them to go dream life. Like, what do you want? And he created a life that I think was like 1.1, 1.2 million. You know what Ken's like. And and then she had created a life that for her was her dream life that was about 350. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But at 351, she thinks, why are we doing more? And he's like, I'm not even halfway there. Yeah. So it's real important that as a family unit as well, that you guys are clear on what that looks like and just investing the time to get clear on that.
Yeah. So is it worth husband and wife, partners, whatever they are, sitting down one night, glass of wine, cup of tea, whatever 100%. It is, and actually mapping out
probably
what
a glass
life
of
looks
wine.
Like. What life looks like in 10 years' time.
100%.
Why do we want it to look like that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Like, what do we want? And then you realize actually most of the things, if you're fortunate enough to listen to this podcast and you happen to live in Australia, which is probably where most people are, you guys have already won. Like, we've already won the game. Most of the things that we can experience in our life are really not buying more stuff. We're already in one of the best, if not the best country in the world. So there's such an abundance of just natural wonder in this world that you can experience. It doesn't cost you any money at all. So once you realize, well, what are the things we really want? We probably already have a lot of those anyway. It might just be, I want to drive a nicer car and have a slightly nicer house and go on better holidays, and maybe send our kids to the best schools. But beyond those things, there's not really a lot of extra stuff that we want. So get clear on what you already have. That'll make you feel more wealthy anyway. Much better to create wealth from a place of feeling wealthy. And then, well, what are the things that we want? How much does that cost? And then if that brings up some stuff for you, which it probably will, of, well, I don't know if I can get there, I don't know how to do that, or I don't feel like we're worthy of that, are we asking too much? That's worthy of exploring. But the conversation should be, I don't know how we're going to get there. And that means you're thinking big enough. Because if you already know how you're going to get there, you're not dreaming big enough, right? You should go, I don't know how. And so we say, don't think about how you're going to get there. Think about who's already done it before, and then ask them how they did it. And that's the benefit of partnerships and mentors and advisors and working with great companies such as yourselves to go, how do you guys bridge the gap for us? And I don't need to think about it all. I just go, Neil, what would you do? And then do that.
Yeah. Because once we know where you want to go, we can reverse engineer that
100%.
and unpack it. And
100%.
Like you said, some people might look at that figure and think it's impossible to do, but
some people do it every day.
Tony Robbins, Tony Robbins says it's people underestimate what they can do in 10 years.
Yes.
No, butchered that quote.
Yeah. Well, people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can achieve in a decade.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to clients about this the other day, like 1,000-day plans, because 10 years seems like a ludicrous amount of time, right? And we were just discussing how much has changed here in like a year. Yeah. And so it's like we're living in a world where so much changes. So I think 10 years is probably too far away for planning for a lot of people. And a year is probably too soon. So 1,000 days, 3 years, is a pretty good range to go, I reckon I could make some big things happen in 3 years or 1,000 days. And that requires people to be sort of semi-focused. So don't underestimate the significance, though, in wealth, as you know better than most. Or like compound, right? Starting today, no matter what the market's like, if you start today versus starting a year from now, it's not going to make a difference in a year, but it will make a difference in 3 decades when you're handing a portfolio over to your family because of the difference that you get. So if I could have started earlier, I wish I had, but I can't, but I can start now, right? So that's significant. And then you're taking action, right?
And like, Grant Cardone talks about massive action.
Bangs his chest.
Small steps every single day.
Yes.
You just write yourself one task every single day that 100%. You need to do to take you towards that 10-year goal or 3-year goal. Then you are moving forward. You're moving in the right direction.
I saw this quote from Jim Rohn. And I was like, geez, he's got some good stuff, right? Yeah. He's not with us anymore, but he just had some good stuff. And he was speaking to this waitress at Denny's, the diner in the United States. And she was asking him what he did, and he explained his work. And she said, well, can you give me some advice? He says, I'll give you 2 of the most powerful questions you'll ever be asked. He says, the first question is, have you discovered or have you found the opportunity that's going to transform your life and the lives of those that you love? And she says, well, no, I haven't. He says, okay, here's my second question. Are you spending time every week to look for that opportunity? And she says, well, no, I'm not. He says, well, you should be able to go to your family and say, hey, I haven't discovered the thing for us yet, but this week I spent time looking for it. Yeah. And so it's like, well, it don't take that much, but you got to put yourself in a position to win the game. It's like, if you haven't found what you're looking for, as the U2 song goes, well, keep looking, right? But you can't not look and then not expect something to happen, right? There's so many opportunities that are there. They're right in front of us, And here's the beauty of this. When you start playing a different game, you start looking for opportunities. Now, because I'm going through the process of building a HMO and getting that off the ground, now I drive by blocks of land and think, fuck, I'd love to build on that. How do I find a way? That's not up for sale. How do I get that? Well, geez, that looks like a big block. I could make some things happen. You start seeing the world differently because you're looking for new things, right? Whereas previously people just drive past it and think it's a block of land. I see, oh, that could be a HMO. I could get positive cash flow from that.
Love it. Yeah. Love it. So we've got the compelling vision. What were the other 2 pillars?
Yes, the next part is internal alignment.
Internal alignment.
And this is, in terms of a team, real critical, but in a family unit, but also personally. So in terms of a team, you have a shared vision, and that might be you and your partner. This is where we're going to go financially. We've got to make sure we're on the same page. And we've got to understand that that's going to require sacrifice, time, energy, effort, but also maybe we're not spending money on those things. We're going to spend money on these things instead. And that's just about being intentional. So that's the first part in terms of alignment, in terms of a team. But individually, we say there's 5 things. So number 1, beliefs. Henry Ford said it better than I ever could when he said, whether you think you can or can't, you're usually right. So if you set a vision of, hey, I want to be a self-made multimillionaire, I want to live in Dalkeith, I want to have the car and everything else, well, you got to believe it's possible. And you might not believe it's possible for you, but you got to believe it's possible, full stop. And part of that might be, well, you drive via Dalkeith on the way to work now, as opposed to driving Stirling Highway. You go up Dalkeith just so you're in proximity, right? Or you start hanging around with people that are wearing the Rolex and driving the Range Rover and traveling business class. You go, oh, I like that. I like me a bit of that. So that's number 1 is you got to have the belief there. And that's why the timing is important, because you might go, well, it's impossible for me. Well, is it impossible in a lifetime? Well, no. Was it impossible in a decade? Maybe. Like, we're probably not going to get there in 12 months. So adjusting that is quite critical. Number 2 is emotion. There's so much emotion around money. And Tony Robbins talks about this, that people associate money to portable power. So if I have money, I feel powerful. If I don't have money, I feel disempowered. And people are used to feeling like they're disempowered by not having the money to do the things that they want to do. They don't have options from that as well. And the crazy thing is that people that have a lot of money don't tend to exercise the finances of it. They exercise the power that comes from it. So most successful people don't use their own money to do shit. But it's people that don't have it think that's the reason why they can't do stuff. So that comes down to the beliefs and the emotions with that. Then we've got your focus. We talk about seeing the blocks of land, and we see, some people see block of land, and Donald Trump sees a Trump Tower, right? It's just different the way you focus on things. Then you've got behaviors. If you are spending more than you earn, you're not going to be in a great place financially. It just goes without saying. Unless you're spending and investing that money ahead of curve. Yeah, there's a difference, but most people don't. And the behavior might be, if you're just getting started in investing and you're afraid, it's probably because you're uneducated. No disrespect, right? We're all learning. And so start, Kiyosaki talks about your IQ is your financial realities, your financial intelligence. So are you reading the books? And not are you reading the paper? Because the paper's designed to sell you more papers. So if the market's going well, we'll talk about housing affordability being a problem. If the market's tanking, we'll talk about property prices tanking. So it's whatever's the negative story that sells, but you should be reading different things that are going to be written from people that are actually in the market and seeing what's actually happening, getting a different source of information. And then finally is values. Taking investment, if you make decisions based off things that are in alignment with your value system, you're going to have a much better long-term gain than the short-term gain. There's plenty of short-term hits and misses. But if you make decisions based off things that you think are in alignment with the value, the type of impact you want to make in the world, that's going to have a real positive difference. And even if the financial return's not there, well, you still feel like you're making progress. So that's internal alignment. And then the final part is proven strategy. And very simple. To summarize proven strategy is, if you try to run your own, you're going to struggle. Because even if you're successful, it's going to take you longer because you're figuring it out. How do you partner with, collaborate with, joint venture with, get a tribe of mentors, right? How do you get advisors around you that have got expertise that you don't? And then there's the idea of, exactly, it's like 1 + 1 is not 2, it's 3 or 4 or 5, and you can get more done as part of that. So that's basically the process. And you can apply that to anything that you're doing in life. What's my vision? Where am I going? Am I in alignment? Do I have the right people around me to make that decision? And then what's my strategy?
Yeah. The internal alignment one sits really well with me because we spoke about it earlier, like where we come from.
Yes.
There's not people, and no disrespect to them, but like I was in that routine of working, going to the pub on a weekend, going back to work, on the pub on a weekend. And for me to get to where I needed to go now, I had to visualize it.
Yes.
So visualization was a big thing. Affirmations were a big thing for me, and a vision board.
Yes.
And it's amazing how many things on that vision board I've actually ticked off.
Yeah.
And I did that probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, congratulations.
So I still check it now and go, wow, it's crazy what can happen once you actually visualize it and believe it.
Yeah.
And then the last one was proximity is power.
Yes.
I started the Perth Entrepreneurs podcast to meet more people like you.
Yeah.
And we've become really good friends. We played football together. We won't get into that. But I intentionally made that podcast to reach out to more entrepreneurs that were in business, so I become more friends with them, because I was in this real estate sphere, which was good. There was a lot of people in there that I could bounce off, but it was just real estate. My business was starting to grow, so I started to reach out to more people in business. So,
and that's
all intentional, isn't it?
That's the power of intention. But you're such a rare individual in terms of the fact that you're so committed to the vision. Like, you remind me a lot of one of my other good friends, Simon Rawadi. And Simon built one of the fastest growing companies in Australia. And obviously you guys are probably, if not already there in terms of the same scope as what he had. But he took a business from 0 to $10 million in revenue in about 3 years. And his philosophy was, when the world is collapsing around you and there's mayhem, he says, expand, don't contract. And so there's a thing about successful people that are committed to a vision, which is, hey, this is where I'm going. And so even if it's carnage, even if it's unorganized, even if it's not all figured out, I'm just committed to that vision. I'm moving forward. And when you're fully in alignment around that, you move forward. And have you read the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary? Yeah. So they were talking about, why didn't you quit? He's like, well, my vision didn't have me quitting. And I was like, fuck that. I'm just scribbling notes in my pad. I'm watching it on the plane. I'm like, that is brilliant. That one piece summarizes it. If you're locked in that this is what we're doing, would you find a way to make one, right? Yeah. And then you look back and you go, oh my God, we did all this stuff. Well, yeah, because you saw it first. Yeah. And you had the courage to see it and believe it was possible, and then you found a way to make it happen. Anyone could have set up the Perth Entrepreneurs podcast, but you did. Yeah. And so as a result, you get all the benefits that come from taking action that most people think about but don't do anything about.
Correct. And then we've also learned a lot from the people that we've met.
Of course.
Which is why we've got the vision and the mission of the business, which is 10,000 rooms by 2031. So everyone in the business knows where they're going. That's the internal alignment. They know the values of the business. They know that our vision is a world where everyone has access to housing, because it's a basic human need.
Yes.
But like you said, we're in one of the best countries in the world. Yeah. But we've got people sleeping in cars, sleeping in tents, sleeping on streets.
Yeah. You did the CEO Sleep Out last year, right?
I did.
Yeah. I saw a post actually for that just recently. I thought, I might do that this year, because there's like a young version of it as well. Yeah. But it's like we don't realize how lucky we are. And there's you can check it out online. I think it's called How Rich Am I? There used to be a different one, but now I think you Google how rich am I, and you can plug in basically where you live and how much money you make, and it'll give you a score. And what's staggering is if you're in Australia and you're on the dole, you're on Centrelink, that's about 25 grand a year. That puts you in the top 85% of the world's wealthiest people, right? So it's like you've already won the lottery. So if you came from that paradigm, not from a place of lack, but from a place of abundance, then it's about service, then it's about contribution, then it's about trying to do more. And ironically, the more people you help, the more money you can make. We make more money from a HMO because we're helping more people in a HMO than if we're just doing it normally, right? So when you shift that, you go, well, that makes sense intuitively. Why is not everyone doing that? Because most people think about themselves, and it's not that it's selfish, but there's a selfishness to it, which is that you're only thinking about you and your family or one family. If you're thinking about 5 families, well, then you impact 5 times more people, therefore you make 5 times more money or thereabouts.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So once we've got them 3 pillars, we know where we're going, we know why we want to do it, we've got the strategy. How do we keep ourselves motivated?
Well, I think success is motivating, right?
Can be, yeah. But it can also demotivate you when you get to a certain level and you think, sure, well, I'm quite comfortable where I am now. Yeah. So you stop towards that goal.
Yeah, so... and that's okay, you know. It's okay to get to it's okay to get to a top of a mountain and go, fuck, I've done really well here, and I'm going to enjoy it, right? So, but naturally, if you're a successful person, then you become quite addicted to the not the struggle, but there is a bit of that. You become quite addicted to the challenge, the chase of it, the game hustle. Of it, the hustle. Yeah. Exactly. You know, people that love playing football. Whether they win or lose, they just want to play football. Just let me play football, right? That's what I said to you, Neil, when we first met. Just let me play football, Neil. You said, no, Calvin, we can't play it anymore. So there's an element of, you know, is it the play or is it the game? And so once you learn, hey, this is just a game, like business and wealth creation, just a game, then you start playing for the sake that you love the game, not because you needed any more from it. And then that becomes a very different type of life, because now you're not playing because you need to get somewhere. Now you're playing because, like, well, where could I go? And that paradigm is massive in terms of that shift, which becomes really exciting. And that happens probably much faster than people think that it will. Because as soon as you realize that, hey, I've got enough and I'm always going to be able to do this and it's all good, then you go, well, wow, where can we take this? That becomes quite exciting. I've had that experience in business, not in wealth creation yet, but certainly through business, you go, wow, okay, well, this is fun. Like, what else can we do with it? So if you get to the top of the mountain, fucking celebrate that, because most times we don't. But then from that, what I tend to find is proximity is power. You know, you think, oh, geez, I'm the biggest fish in this pond. Then you start going to a different pond. You realize, well, I'm a tiny fish. And then that gets exciting because most high achievers don't want to be the small fish anymore. And so that's challenging you. Or you get around great people that inspire you to want to play at a different level or a bigger level, right? And that's the beauty of being surrounded by great people, you know. There's been times over the last couple of years that we've known each other where we've had some great things going on. You've had great things going on. And it's like, you come here and I go, wow, I'm inspired by all the stuff that I see here. And I go, fuck, this is great. I want more of this stuff. And then we have a conversation about something that we're up to. And then you and Joe are like, you build off one another, not in a it's sort of zero-sum game. It's that your success inspires my success and mine inspires your, and then it's just like, what else can we do together as part of that? And so I think that's exciting. That is just being able to be in a place where you get to, life is full of get-tos, not got-tos.
Yeah. Now, some people are actually afraid of the change.
Yes.
That they'll see, the friends that they might leave behind,
of course,
as they start to network in new circles and stuff like that. What can we do in that situation?
Look, it's part of life to want to fit into social groups, right? We're social creatures. So that's part of the gig. There's also a thing which is really significant called mirror neurons. So you'll see it. If you're a fast talker and someone's a slow talker, you'll slow down a bit, they'll speed up. It happens biologically. So it's important to know that you're part of the game. And, you know, there's elevations that you've got to be aware that if you are hanging around with 5 broke people, you're the 6th broke person. Nothing wrong necessarily with those people, but financially they're not where you want to be. So you've got to be conscious about elevation. People tend to then naturally think about what am I losing, not about what am I gaining. Like, yeah, you've got some great friends now, but the different friends at a different level could be even better friends, probably are better friends for you as well, because they're in alignment with where you're going, not where you've been. So I don't consciously think about trying to cut people off per se. I just try to focus on investing more into the places that I'm going with the people that I want to build more of a relationship with. Yeah. And if you're busy and you're successful and life's happening, you probably just don't have the time to do those other things anyway, right? There's very few people that I actively spend time with. Obviously, you and Joe are on top of that list with Kim and others. Yeah. But it's like I've got other people that I sort of know that I don't have anything against them, but they're not in my immediate circle because they're not necessarily in the direction that I'm heading, and that's okay. So it's okay to not hang around with everybody that you always hung around with. That's okay. People are in your life sometimes for a season, not for the entire thing. And then at the end of the day, what you've got to do is, I saw this study, I just released a video about it the other day. A Stanford professor, I forget his name, did a study of the number one regret people had when they die.
I've seen the video, yeah.
And it was that they lived life on somebody else's rules, basically. They lived life on somebody else's terms, not their own.
Yeah.
And so it's like beautiful that you want to keep everybody and sort of, keep the group together, and that's inspired about that. But it's real difficult. Life is hard, even when you've got great people around you going after big things. If you've got people that are negative, that are trying to pull you down, it's a zero-sum game. They're either making you better or worse. So you've just got to continue to feed the Mavs that are growing with you, and that's just super critical. And if you care enough about the impact you're making in the world, then you're just going to do that by default. You have to do that.
And as you grow as a person, people think as you grow and you become more successful, life becomes easier. Your problems just become bigger, don't they?
And you get better at dealing with them, right? And they're better problems, right? Yeah. Like Branson's got much better money problems than we do.
Yeah.
He's got much more of it, right? Still dealing, I'm sure, with financial stress. Yeah. I'm sure he's still got bills to pay and unexpected things that happen, but he's just dealing with billions of dollars rather than millions of dollars. So it's... most people think, if I just stop having all these problems, life would be great. No. Like, there's always going to be problems, but you just become, it's less about you being broken and you not knowing how to fix them and more about going, okay, this is part of the game that I'm playing, right? And we just adapt to them and we keep moving forward.
Yeah, love it. Mate, tell us about Wild Success. Tell us about the company. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, so we're 10 years this month, actually.
Congratulations,
Thank you. What a ride it's been. We started very humble beginnings here in Perth. I moved overseas to work for a guy I'd never met before, and came back and started the business. Back then it was called Coyles International, and I went from 40K in debt to 100 grand in 90 days, $1 million in 10 months, and then we just never looked back. And so today we've got 200,000+ clients, 85 countries around the world, and the book's coming out on the 10-year anniversary of our first event, which is this Sunday.
Yep.
So it's be very exciting. Got about 1,000 people coming to the summit, which would be amazing. So hopefully we get a global bestseller. It's been just quite remarkable to share with people how can you go about making a meaningful difference in people's lives, and how do you overcome and break through the barriers that people have in their lives. And normally it's internal, not external. And then how do you have the courage to design and then live life on your own terms, whatever that looks like and represents. And I'm very fortunate. I grew up in a great family home, a lot of love, a lot of support, and obviously plenty of adversity that came from parents separating and different mental health challenges in our family. But you realize, hey, you get one shot at this, so fucking go after it. And I've probably just been unapologetic about wanting to go after it. And you realize actually most people don't do that. Most people don't play the game to win. They play the game not to lose. And for me, if there's one thing I want people to realize is, like, whether it be investing or not, play the game to win. If you're going to invest to win. Don't invest not to lose. Yes, obviously be aware that you want to have defense, but as you know from playing soccer with me, it's all off. Doesn't matter if we win 8-7 as long as we win 8-7. And so I think people can take something from that, which is like, when you're afraid, be bold. One of my favorite quotes is, fear, nervousness, discomfort, and anxiety is your soul's compass to growth. And so we say to people, when in doubt, be bold. Swing for the fences, because more often than not, the fact that you swung for the fences means you'll probably at least hit the single. But if you get more than that, that's a win, right? So it's been an incredible journey. We've done some amazing stuff, and we've got some great clients and friends from that work, and now we get to have a new chapter of our lives, and the book's a great way to celebrate it.
It is, mate. It is. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to the book launch next week.
So there's the party, the 10-year anniversary party that you're coming to, VIP.
Oh, yes.
VVIP. Yeah, you fly the helicopter to the Ritz. Yeah, just across the pond. So that's next Thursday, but the actual book launch is this Saturday. This Sunday.
Good. Yeah. And what does WILD stand for?
So wild, obviously, is a principle, is like living a wild life. Is like, what does that look like for you? I think that's different for everybody. For me, it's about waking up and choosing what I want to do with the day, right? But WILD as an acronym is wellness, income, love, lifestyle, direction. And so it's like, how do you have success in every area? Because I'm sure you've experienced this as well. I had a family that had some success in some areas, and I had like early mentors in areas that were financially successful, but maybe the relationships were broken, or were overweight, but were quote unquote spiritual. And so it's like, well, how do you have it all? How do you have success in every area? And that just requires a different set of strategies, because some strategies will make you successful in one area and then just cause carnage in other areas. And then if people are intentional, they want to actually play a bigger game and have success across the board, well, then that requires some intelligence and some planning and some intention about that. And that's really what it's about.
And it's about balance. Is balance possible?
I would use the word harmony rather than balance, because balance equates to two things being an equal weight. Right? If the scales are balanced, both sides are equal, but they're not equal. Someone that's, and for you right now, you've got a beautiful little boy. Life's not balanced for you, but it's about creating harmony, because you don't have the same time or the same energy or the same focus that you used to have purely for business. But that doesn't mean that life is worse. It's much better now. It's just about creating a sense of harmony where the best of you can show up in different ways. But that's just about being intentional about, again, what's the compelling vision? If the compelling vision is I have a family and a business, I have investments, I've got time for myself personally, well, I'm not spending the same amount at work that I spend at the gym. I'm spending an appropriate amount at work, an appropriate amount at the gym, and I'm trying to make sure that those elements harmonize so that they actually add more value collectively than what they would individually. And sometimes that harmony is out of balance.
Yep.
But that's fine.
That's fine.
That's part of the gig. And then it's important just make sure you've got a great feedback loop. So I know something that you do and something that I do is at the end of the week, we review the week and go, okay, well, what worked well, what didn't? Everyone, Tyson says everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And running a business and being an investor and having a family and a wife and everything else is getting punched in the face, emotionally, physically, financially. And so, okay, recalibrate. What do I need to do differently this next week to get back on track? And then it's just about doing the basics real well, the consistent things every day. Those things going to create phenomenal returns long term.
Yeah, and it does just come back to doing the basics really
100%.
well. So people think when they want to get a property investing that they need to jump straight to the end result and be doing a 3-unit subdivision.
No, God, no.
What are the basics? How do we do them well? What are your basics that you do well?
Well, you ask me or ask my wife, it'd be different, right? So for me, I think without the external goals that we have, the bigger goals, start first and foremost with yourself. Yeah. So you got to fill your own cup. This tends to be easier, I find, for my male clients to do because men tend to be more selfish or self-focused, and that's actually a real asset for us, whereas women tend to be more other-focused, which is why they're great mothers, for example. Yeah. And you play to your strengths, right? So for the men listening, it's probably easier for you. Women, you need to do more of it as well. But for me, it starts with me, and that starts before the day starts for everybody else. So the time that I can get up in the morning, for me, I've realized as a keystone habit, if I start my day before the girls, my wife and daughter, and soon have another daughter in September, if I start before them, I'm a great person, a great husband, a great father, a great business owner, and just great to Calvin. But if I wake up because they woke me up, life is not good because I'm being reactive. So for me, that's very simple. I like to do something in the morning to get me going, physical movement. I've started to also do a bit of journaling as well, just to get back into that routine and habit. I think a lot of highly successful people have got a lot of things going on, and if it's all in your head, you got to get it out of your head. Yeah. So that helps for me, and that just gives me the clarity and the peace of mind to go, where do I want to apply my focus and my attention? We both were talking about this tactically, but something that we've both done recently is bringing an assistant on board, and that's been a game changer for me. I've never had an assistant previous. We've had a lot of team members, but never someone that was really just focused on getting more from me. And when you go, actually, if I show up, we win, then it's important to make sure you've got that on board as well. And that doesn't have to be an executive assistant or even a person. It could be a virtual assistant. But having somebody to help you manage the minutiae of life that just gets in the way, the life admin, so you can do higher level creative thinking is really critical. Because it's difficult to be prolific in whatever you're doing if you're not well organized, if you're not on top of things. And so I speak to a lot of high performers, and there's a great question, which is, when you think about the challenges of your life right now, are you able to meet and exceed those challenges? Are you just getting by, or are you drowning in those challenges? And for most people, they're drowning in them because life feels too overwhelming because they're not well structured, they're not well planned, they're not intentional. There's a lot of priorities, which means that they don't have a priority that they're moving towards. And we live in a world where most people struggle because of overconsumption, not underconsumption. Physically, most people are fat because they eat too much, right? But also in business and in life and investing, there's a million great investment opportunities right now. If you don't have a good investment, you're not looking hard enough. There's so many. That's not a hard thing. The hard thing is deciding which one you're going to back. Yes. And we were just having a conversation before about, if you're doing a traditional build, a HMO build, or a NDIS build, what's the difference in expense or investment, and then difference in return? And that's part of me decision making now, going, okay, well, if I'm allocating resources, I want the best bang for buck. And then you've got to analyze those things, but thinking is difficult. And a tactic I think that will help a lot of people is there's a guy called Vern Harnish, runs it. Yep. So I learned from Vern a couple of years ago. He said there's two things the top 50 CEO in the world do. One, they read a book every 2 weeks. So I think we've all got to be in a state of learning and growth. It really doesn't matter what you're learning. It just matters that you're learning, that you're growing, because that inspires other things that inspire other things. And the second thing was that they allocate time to think. And so if you don't have time in your calendar to think, to get out, to have these types of conversations, I have better thoughts driving to and from this than what I would have if I spent the hour in the office, because I'm thinking about the conversation, I'm thinking about other things, I'm thinking about you, we're connecting dots. So it's like just being in the space itself is really quite critical. Those are some things for me I think that are good. But exercise, move the body right. And for everyone that's listening, I've got a rule which is called the 3-day rule. And it's pretty simple. I don't know if I actually personally created it. I don't know who I learned it from, so I'm going to pretend it was me. But it's like, hey, there's going to be times where financially you feel like, shit, we spent all this money. We just come back from a big holiday, got no cash, everyone's stressed, right? Or maybe you haven't been eating properly and you're tired and the little one's not sleeping through, whatever's happening, right? And life just seems like, it's impossible to get out of the darkness that you're in. It's just 3 days. Put in 3 days at the gym, you're going to feel unbelievable. Physically, you'll be no different, but you'll feel, I feel like The Rock, right? Because I've worked out, I've lifted my dumbbells for 3 days. Or you even just start journaling. If you're in anxious or a depressed place, just journal for 3 days. You get all that shit out of your head and you're like, actually, life is great again. Go for a walk with your partner and reconnect for 3 days in a row. Like, eat clean food for 3 days. Do a strategic spend and don't spend any money on stupid shit for 3 days, and check your accounts and pay off some bills and get on top of your finances. 3 days will be a whole different world. So people underestimate just the significance of those small things. And I know how important they are for me, and I'm already someone that teaches this stuff and is very well aware of them. So if they're having a big impact for me, for the average person that's not doing most of those things, are going to have a huge impact.
Man, so much gold in this podcast. Don't even know where to begin to kind of unpack it myself. I'm going to have to go back and listen. How do people get the book, Calvin? How do people find out more about Wild Success?
Well, it depends on when it comes out in terms of when the podcast comes out. But if they go to our website, wildsuccess.global, there's links on there. We are doing a launch on Monday, where they can get a copy for 99 cents with our partners at Amazon. And so that's wildsuccessthebook.com. And if they go to that anyway, it'll redirect them after the launch regardless. Or just check us out on social. We'll have all the links and stuff like that as well as part of that. So it's just Calvin Coyles on Instagram and Facebook.
Wicked, mate. Wicked. Is it going to be on Audible as well?
Hasn't done Audible yet, but we are going to do Audible before the end of the year. So we're doing the physical book now, and then the Audible will come out in probably November, December.
Brilliant. And there's other books out as well, isn't there? This isn't your first book.
Not my first book, but probably wouldn't read the other ones. I'm being honest. Just read that one. That's a good one.
Calvin, again, mate, thank you very much for going to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I hope people got something from this. There's so much to unpack there.
I hope they got at least one thing. Or they're not going to be invited the third time.
Well, that's it. Go back and take the basics. So, take one thing from it, work on that one thing, right?
Yeah.
Calvin, it's always a pleasure, mate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
Cheers.
Thank you, brother.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you tune in the same time next week so you stay up to date with all the cash flow positive property updates.